Good morning, Gabriele. Thank you very much for coming to our value creation videos. We are on episode 61. So welcome. And why don't we start with your small introduction and we move forward with the questions.
Thank you, Saurabh. You want me to start with a small introduction of
Yes, yeah, yourself.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. My name is Gabriele Campi. I'm a biologist by training, spent 10 years in a lab in academic research at the San Raffaele Hospital and New York University. I work basically in immunology, tumor immunology, and then basic immunology. And then, as I always say, I sold my soul to the dark side of science, and I started to work with for venture capital funds in Zurich and in London. And then I set up my own investment company, which is called Aurora Science, which at the moment is basically frozen because of fundraising issues. So I am actually now working for Exalab Italia as a CEO.
Super. Thank you, Gabriele. So now let me get back to some basic questions before we get into some tough questions, right? So if we look at the history of your country, Italy, right? Around 9th century, for example, Maghribi Jews settled on the southern shores of Mediterranean and in Sicily. Peasants, Italian peasants started sending their sons to trade with these Maghribi Jews. Under the influence of, let's say, Otto, the towns of Lombardy and Tuscany, started flourishing. Amalfi, Pisa, and Genoa also started to flourish on the back of Maghribi trade. Florence became wealthy, by weaving wool and silk. So I think trading helped a lot, and I think by 1500, Italy's GDP was like 60% higher than European average. Given that, let's say Italians were very good, in trading and so on, and right now also I think partly they are good. But what makes you a little bit behind in venture capital, especially in biotech industry?
Okay, so thank you for the introduction and for the Italian history summary. So this is a good point, actually. The answer that many people give is lack of capital, but I do not believe there is a lack of capital. I do believe there is a mentality that needs to be changed. And the mentality, the venture capital mentality in Italy is still, things are changing now, but it's still too conservative. And there is no attitude for risk. And also there is no proper attitude in evaluating innovation, so exploiting innovation. For example, as an example, in Italy, university are starting to exploit their own patents, their own intellectual property portfolio through out licensing, procedures. But it's something very new. While in Europe, it started, I would say, decades ago, something like this. And so the the mentality of I believe there is a lack of long-term view, but more of a short-term view in terms of return of investment. And of course, when you're dealing with technology, you need time to develop technology, and there is an associated risk to the development of such technology. Plus, which is very important, there is let's say the Italian personalities, which is very, emotional and very with a big ego. And sometimes we forget to put our ego aside on the side and our emotions on the side, and to focus only on the business part of the of the process, of the value creation process. So I had an experience working in technology transfer. So basically, I was in the middle between potential investors and researchers, and so two big egos, like the investor and the researcher. So the researcher was seeing the investor as somehow the devil that was buying my 20 years of research, while the venture capitalist was actually seeing the researcher not enough skilled to manage the innovation they were working on. So there's basically somehow a mentality, a culture and a mentality uh, theme and subject to be solved, I believe. Yeah.
Perfect. You gave me many answers, which will lead me to ask many other questions. The first is this aspect of long-term view is you have what you have said is right, but do you think it is very specific to Italians or it is very generic among Europeans? So, for example, recently I was reading an article by the CEO of Argenex, right? Team Van Hauer Myren, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. So he said Europe has a chicken and egg problem. And if you know, Argenex is right now one of the most successful companies from Europe. And except one European investor, the CEO moved, to say, banked on a lot of US investors. And, that's how he kind of raised maybe around 1 billion euros or dollars. So he said Europe has a chicken and egg problem. Specialist healthcare funds are scarce because not enough biotechs are available to invest. And biotech are scarce because domestic investors do not support them, right? So, do you think that this is a kind of a problem on a European level, as a kind of European culture where you're not as risk takers as Americans, for example, and that also explains the difference in terms of the growth in biotech industry. For example, if you see. And that's how we all, say here, all European companies are also longing to, now that's another case of price and all that, but are longing to license out to large pharmaceutical companies in US, or at least their end goal is to be in the US, right? So, do you think that, it's very Italian specific, or you think that, this is a general mindset, and do you think that, culture cannot be changed, right? It's very hard to change the culture. So, and the mindset, because you're in that particular environment. So do you foresee any developments, or are you positive about that these things might change in the future as things progress?
Well, so I think that Europe and Italy are still on two different levels. So generally, Europe is more advanced in terms of biotech investments and in taking policies. Americans are on a third level. They are very much into the game, and I believe one important factor is that they're not afraid to fail. I believe there's a way of saying fail fast, fail cheap, and fail.
Yeah.
I forgot the third failure.
Yeah.
While in Italy, once you failed, you fail. You're a failure, and
Looked down upon. Yeah.
Right. And so this is also cultural, and also I believe that the Anglo-Saxon part of Europe, so especially the UK and maybe the northern countries, are more advanced in terms of are more Americanized in terms of approach to investments, while the Mediterranean part is actually basically a bit more conservative. I have some experience with Spain, which is doing very good, I believe, and they're actually catching up a lot. While, for example, Italy is still still running to get there. Get there. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say, for example, there are different cultural traits we talked about that is also kind of impeding the risk-taking attitude and so on. Do you also think that ambition, is also something that plays a part, because, for example, if you know Ray Dalio, who is the, let's say, founder of Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest hedge fund, he comes out, and he has written a book also, The Changing World Order, where he talks about, how, and he evaluates why and how the country grows, what are the factors. And one of the factors he cites about the growth of a country is also the ambition. So he cites, let's say, European, countries, especially, let's say, Mediterranean countries, as kind of lower growth, because um, he argues that, of course, people here, for them, work is important, but it's not as important as the pleasures of life, which has a very different philosophical, we can get into that discussion, of course, maybe in another discussion. But maybe that ambition also is a kind of one of the drivers.
That is a good point. For example, in Italy, ambition is seen as a double-faced thing. It can be good, but it can also be bad. Oh, he's too ambitious. He wants to be
Yeah.
or whoever he thinks he is. So this is a good point. Yeah. So basically, I believe that the ambition, seeing ambition as a good part of your job, is as a positive, skill that you need to have, is important. In America, if you're not ambitious, you basically do not work, right? It's mandatory. Second part is very interesting. I mean, it is true that I mean, I talk for myself and not for Italy, but that the quality of life and the personal quality of life needs to be balanced with the professional one. And so I tend to design, situations where I can have personal growth and a personal also, um, quality of life that allows me to cultivate and to nurture whatever I think it's to be nurtured. And it's not only work-wise, but it's also personal-wise. I lived for 6 years in the States, and I saw that there is a devotion for the job, and actually it's also a man feels realized when he's successful on the job. Personally speaking, I feel realized if I'm successful on the job, but if also I am successful in
Personal
cultivating
life.
my
Yeah.
personal life, cultivating my own garden.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's talk about something about your investing experience. So when you were working in this VC industry, what were the primary factors you used to evaluate an asset?
Okay. So there is the very common checklist, which is innovation, IP position, team, funding, et cetera, et cetera. Tick, 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 tick. And at the beginning, when I was more naive, I was thinking that the innovative part, the innovation parts of the product that you were investing on or selling was the most important thing. And then working with people, I believe, and I realized that the team has a great impact on the growth of a particular company. Also, because I believe that most of the problems are arising from people more than from assets or tangible assets, let's say. This being said, we were focusing on innovative approaches, and in Europe, when I was actually dealing with, working on a lot of science, so the technology has had a great value in the valuation of the potential investment opportunity. It is also difficult to evaluate the technology because, as I was mentioning to you last time, I can understand immunology, but I cannot really understand, for example, neurology with the depth I have within the immunology field. And it's a complex job to properly evaluate an investment opportunity in terms of innovation. That's why, especially, I remember when I started to do VC, I come from academia. I came from academia, right? So I finished my PhD, and few funds in Italy were recruiting PhD individuals or professionals. Mostly were from economics or engineers, but few of them were innovative technology guys. Now things have been changed, are changing, and funds are way more structured in terms of teams. So that reflects on a better evaluation of the innovation you're investing on. But I would say that the innovative approach and team are the two most important factors I would consider.
So yeah, you talked about team. I think when we are discussing about last time, you talked about the people aspect also, and I think I also believe that this is one of the very critical aspect. So if I can ask you, on what dimension you rate yourself better than your peers in judging people?
Oh. Personally,
Yeah. I'm sure after having evaluated so many deals, I'm sure you, and the focus on team, I'm sure you might have gained experience in judging people. So on what dimension you would rate better than peers? I'm not trying to say that you have to tell that you are the best. Nobody can be actually. We make mistakes. We are humans, right? But
yeah, I don't know, Surab. I trust my gut, and I would say that I tend to getting people pretty fast in terms of, especially in terms of insecurities, because I had many, so I kind of understand them, and I'm working on them. But I believe it's also very difficult to standardize a process to evaluate people, and so it's basically somehow what your gut is telling you. And let's say I hit the bullseye 65% of the cases, 70% of the cases. Sometimes I evaluate a team, and I'm like, this is a good team, but then problems are arising and coming up, and it's a tough question. So it's not an easy question to answer.
so I know what you mean. So let me get back to you. So I read a lot about evolution, okay, and I always try to find some analogy in that, and of course there was a very recent book I read, what I learned from investing. What I learned from Darwin in investing. It's a very fascinating book, which I think I recommended to many people. So the author argues that, let's say, he gives example of many animals, like for example, large male green frogs. They emit croaks at lower frequency, right, to show their dominance to, let's say, small sized frogs, and also gain an evolutionary advantage. So the females are attracted to their croaks at lower frequency. However, some small sized frogs also have found a way to lower their signals, trying to deceive the females that they are larger than they are actually, and that has led to their evolution as well. Okay. Now let's say if you talk about another kind of animals like male guppies, which are a fish, they display very vibrant colors to attract female guppies. They are like very colorful, and that's attributed to carotenoids, a class of pigments that actually also is used for fortifying the immune system and acting as antioxidants, for example. So and research has also demonstrated that the female finches are drawn to, let's say, male finches exhibiting rich, deep colors, and as a result of consuming nutritious food compared to counterparts. Now, the point here is the following. the male guppies I talked about, to display that vibrant colors, also need to consume nutritious food. But also when they are at, let's say, um, when they are exhibiting these vibrant colors, they are also falling prey to other fish, for example. So it's a costly signal. It's a kind of a double-edged sword, right? And then this investor argues that this is how he tries to see whether the entrepreneurs are emitting cheap signal or very costly signal. So the costly signal here implies that there is a skin in the game. So the male guppies, having exhibiting these red colors, on one hand side, of course, to attract and let's say for the evolutionary advantage, eat nutritious food, attract female guppies, but on the other hand side, they also fall prey to that. So, in a similar manner, what are the signals that, the entrepreneurs can give that could be cheap, and I was thinking out loud myself, that, for example, um, using his analogy, of course, he invests in, let's say, revenue generating companies, so, of course, in biotech, it's not a revenue generating company. So what are the signals that biotech CEOs or team can produce that could be very interesting for investors? So, for example, I was putting an analogy that, let's say, I'm sure you might have seen, you could keep posting on LinkedIn every week, about developments, or I am attending conferences and all that. These are kind of cheap signals, so you cannot, let's say, invest, based on these cheap signals. Of course, many times these cheap signals can lead to believe that you are doing very well, and everything is fine, but it's not. So I know it's a complex question which I asked to you, that and so do you see any kind of, if I talk you if I talk with you regarding signals that this team emit, have you thought about that, there could be any, oh, these are the signals that I think, it's kind of not easy to produce, and I think, I would rather put money in this kind of team rather than a person, who develops these cheap signals, for example.
I didn't think this interview was going this way, to be not really prepared to answer some questions, but I'll try. Okay, so as an investor, you're asking, right? As an investor, not as a CEO. So as an investor,
No,
what
yeah,
are the signals that a team could emit, and what are the deep and solid signals that a
yeah,
team can? Okay,
exactly.
okay. Well, so it's a sort of brainstorming for me as well now.
Yeah,
So, okay, I believe that um, uh, the, the one of the first thing I always appreciated is the truthfulness. So basically, when I believe someone, okay, a lot of people are talking, and a lot of people are making them picturing themselves bigger than they are. So I like somehow a sort of a solid, humble approach, which doesn't mean
hmm,
to be humble, but it means to be, look, this is who I am, this is what we can do, and this is where we can go. Okay, in a very structured manner. So no mm, shines and no name dropping and nothing, but a concrete approach. Because this reflects on a proper evaluation on yourself, and you understand, and that this means like I am I'm coaching a soccer team, and I know it's not Real Madrid or Manchester United, but I know that I can play my game, and I'm in Premier League. I'm not going to be in the first five, but I know I can play my games, and I can win some and I can lose some. So this truthfulness, I don't know if this is the right word, is was very 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 important actually. So, and to me that is a solid signal, um, which is actually what I'm trying to achieve now as a CEO, because being on both part of the fence, I can understand what investors want and what a CEO should do. You know, and it's so another feature that I like is commitment. So basically, what you could clearly understand when someone is committed to what he is doing. Like on the spot, he has all the information in his mind. He can provide, strategic connections. He can provide solutions, and this reflects on the attitude. For example, I pretty much don't like people that are bringing problems, right? Not because there are no problems, but because what I believe you should do is to bring a problem, but also a potential solution, you know? And that is a sort of attitude that you need to have when you talk to an investor. Look, it's very risky. Yeah, we know it's very risky. So yes, there is a problem, but we're prepared to do this and this and this to mitigate the risk, you know? And this is what came up to my mind here now.
Yeah, got it. So kind of a humility combined with truthfulness, sincerity are kind of signals that you
Right.
look at,
I
okay.
mean, the personal point of view is I don't want to bring it too much on the personal point of view, but it is very important. And especially as a CEO, I have to manage people, you have to manage problems, you have to manage strategic decisions, you have to manage investors, you have to manage a lot of people, and the attitude is very important.
So now you have as transition to the CEO level. So what skills you think that an investor or venture capital possesses, okay? And what skills the CEO requires? So when you have transitioned, do you see any gaps in the skills that uh, you need as a CEO rather than where you had, as an investor? And what are the overlapping skills also that you see that you could use it, in a function as a CEO?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, as I mentioned before, being in both part of the fence, somehow I understand the mentality of investors, and now I am understanding the mentality of running a company. It's my first CEO job. The skills I believe I have is knowing how to deal with investors. What I was saying. Okay. So skills that is important as a CEO is to understand the investment process, the dynamics of the investment process, and to be set at some tables with some sort of standing, so to talk, you have to know what you're talking about. So you have to know what kind of sentences and what kind of topics investors do not want to hear, for example, or uncertainty about the funding requests. I always think that it's better to ask more, but in a precise way, so not to be afraid to ask for, I don't know, we need 20 million for phase one development. But if you can argument it structurally, it is very important. On the other side, I am actually learning how to deal with people because, as I mentioned before, the role of the investor is a bit easier, right? You have the money and it's and and you allocate money, while running a company is and this goes back to what I was saying before about the team, is to also create a sort of harmonious environments of working, and that's why I do not tend to impose any decision. Also because I'm not a co-founder of the company in this particular case, but I would never do it. I mean, not decision imposing, but decision harmonically decided. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
between. So it's very important to make the team being part of the decision process, Also because ideas are coming from discussions, from brainstorming, and from
Yeah.
then my role is to sum up and to structure all these inputs into a strategy.
Right.
It's challenging. It's challenging because of the ego, because sometimes I'm like, no, it's like that. It should be like this. Uh, it's challenging because you have to learn how to listen, which is very important. And
Yeah.
in this world, we live in a world where everyone is talking, but no one is listening. And
Exactly.
the listening part is way more energy expending than the talking part.
Yeah.
Uh, because you have to interiorize the message, you have to manage the message inside, you have to understand it, and you have to propose an output which is, somehow smart or valuable. Um, and I mean that's why I'm very happy of being on the other side of the fence at the moment, and uh, uh, this is basically where I'm. Yeah.
Perfect. So now my last two questions, so that we wrap everything on time. You said last time that about your hobbies, right? And also one of the hobbies you talked about is that you produce music,
Yeah.
right? What have you learned, from your hobbies? Not including just producing, let's say, music, about anything that you have applied in your real world, whether it is in terms of investing or whether it is in your CEO job. Have you learned anything, while doing this part-time hobby?
That's very interesting. Uh, okay. So I believe that there are somehow two ways of doing music, right? Which is two ways of doing business. The first one is trying to design a product that could be marketable. It could be liked and by people from people by people. For example, I want to write a pop song that is somehow that will be very popular on all radio stations. So it has to last 3 minutes. It needs to have an intro, and then a verse, and then a chorus, and then a second verse, and then another chorus. Structure. And then there is the artist, which is basically bringing what he has or she has inside into a product that can be a song, or it can be a business, or it can be, which is, and and that's where the magic happens. When the market perceives that the product that you are proposing is somehow genuine, and somehow it's arising from an inner movement more than from a marketing strategy. Uh, Look, I, I'm sorry, this interview is basically going somewhere far from biotech, and but this being said, we live in a world where the market is king, right? So it's full of pop songs, and it's full of easy and ugly to me songs, which are very, very, very popular, and they're making millions out of these songs. So my my answer, it's I've never been I was never a salesman. Okay, I was a researcher, then an investor, now a CEO. So the part that I'm lacking is the sales part, which is probably what I would need to work on a little bit more, trying to do somehow a product in the middle between a pop song following the market rules and a song which is basically reflecting what you're feeling, which is basically reflecting your inner world. I try to to do it professionally for a couple of years. I set up my own little recording studio, and another what I've learned there is exactly this. Uh, I was the producer and I was not the artist, so I had to listen to the artist as I have to listen to the team as a CEO, of the company, and then I have to harmonize and put my added value, like you do, for example, in your job. The added value is the strategic thinking and the which can be that soft skill that makes it happen. The X factor. There's also a TV transmission. Yeah.
Perfect. Gabriele, thank you very, very much, for your time. I really appreciate coming and sharing the valuable inputs. I assume this is going to help a lot to a lot of people who will be listening to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Saurabh.